Om Jnanatimidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Mano Vishlam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Darati Shapadantikam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, we're broadcasting outside my office, 6:30 in the morning on Saturday. Today is what is today? 18th, 19th? My watch says 18th, I could be wrong. And sun is going to be coming up over there. I don't know if it's going to work when the sun comes up, but it's working now. And so I decided I wanted to talk on a topic which I think is very important. And it's based on a conversation that Srila Prabhupada had. And they were talking, Prabhupada was talking with his disciples, or his disciples were inquiring about being controlled. As we know, we're all controlled, we're not God. But there was some idea that when you're liberated, you're not controlled. You're jivan mukta, you're a free soul. So you're not actually controlled anymore. And then Prabhupada said, no, that's not true. There's never a time when you're not controlled. It's just a question of what you're controlled by. So in the conditioned state, you're controlled by the three modes of nature. And in the liberated state, you're controlled by Krishna's internal potency, or you could say you're controlled by Krishna's love. Because you're not controlled by the three modes of nature. You're controlled by your ecstasy, you're controlled by your attachment to Krishna. But definitely you're not controlled by the three modes of nature. So just as the material world is governed by three modes, sattva, rajas, and tamas, the spiritual world is governed by the Ladini Shakti, which is the blissful potency, the Sambit, which is the knowledge potency, and Sat, Sambit, Sandini, and Ladini. The Sandini is the existence potency. So there are different energies. And these energies are experienced by us when we're engaged in devotional service, when we're hearing Bhagavatam or we're hearing class. We come under the influence of a higher energy when we're in kirtan, when we're chanting japa, at least if we're chanting properly. Then we're under the influence of a higher energy, spiritual energy. When we're in contact with the modes of nature, then we're under the influence of a lower energy, and we feel the difference. So the significant point is we have this experience. If you're hearing a class, especially from someone who's a really good teacher and is bringing you into a transcendental position, you feel yourself being transported into another level of consciousness, or another realm of consciousness. And if you're in a good kirtan, you feel yourself being transported. Or if you're in good association, you feel yourself being transported by that association. And similarly, if you're in bad association, or you're hearing something that is degrading your consciousness, then you feel pulled down. And you're not actually doing anything, you're just being influenced. And the fortunate or unfortunate situation is that you're in the right or wrong environment. So, to this morning walk conversation, when this was being discussed, Prabhupada said you're always under the control of something, either Krishna's inferior or Krishna's superior energy. So there's never a time, even in a liberated state, where we're not under control. Even Krishna's under the control of Radha. She enamors him in every way, and he always has to try to please her. So even the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's under the control of his devotees. And Krishna states that in Bhagavatam. Devotees are in my heart, sadhu grasta hridayo, they capture my heart. So I'm bound by them in love. And in so many ways, Krishna shows that he's bound by his devotee to reciprocate. So how does that help us in our understanding of our practice of Krishna consciousness? Well, a lot of what we try to do as conditioned souls, as practitioners of sadhana bhakti, is put ourselves in a position where the influence is going to uplift us. It's not that we're so much doing it, but we're making the decision, or the effort we're making is to put ourselves in a position in which we'll be uplifted. Now, we were just last night hearing the story of Ajamil, and Sachinandan Swami's here. So one of the things that happened with Ajamil is one day he went to the forest to get some flowers. His parents sent him there. And in the forest, there was a prostitute, and a man was engaged with a prostitute. And it really agitated his mind. It actually, that event, amazingly, that event was the cause of his fall down. And he later invited that prostitute into his home to become a servant, and then gradually he developed a deeper relationship with the prostitute than with his wife. And he kicked his wife and his mother out of the house. He went crazy. And so it all began with that, seeing that prostitute. Yes, that's right. Our free will is who we're going to be, what environment we're choosing to be controlled by. And then when we're in that environment, of course, do we allow that environment to control us? Because you can go to class and not listen. You can be in a toxic environment and not allow yourself to be controlled by it. But generally, we are controlled by our environments. We willfully allow ourselves to be controlled. So, Ajamil, just by seeing, for a man seeing a beautiful woman, it infects his heart. So Ajamil, just by seeing, he was so infected that influenced the trajectory of his entire life. And he did such crazy things in his life. He became a thief. And he did so many things to maintain himself. So that's an example of being degraded. And then, of course, we have so many examples of being uplifted. So I was giving a class. I do a workshop on vows. And one of the principles was exactly this. If you take a vow, then you have to make certain you don't allow yourself to be in any situation which would influence you in a negative way, or would make it difficult or impossible to follow your vow. So it's not just gut determination that I'm going to follow my vow, but there's details. So when you're thinking about following a vow, then you want to think of, well, what circumstances would make it difficult or impossible to follow it? And what circumstances would be favorable or make it possible to follow it? And so, just yesterday I was reading, and there's a verse in Bhagavatam, and the verse was talking about determination. And Prabhupada was talking about brahmachari life, and also talking about fasting. And he was saying, if a man is determined, a man can remain without sex, remain a brahmachari, if he's determined not to become attached to women, if he makes that decision, this is what I'm going to do in this life. Or a person can fast if they make that decision that today I'm going to fast. So, in the same way, when one takes a vow, they make a determination, they make a decision, but simultaneously, they have to make sure that they keep themselves. These are love bugs, and there's two entities together. They're so attached. You see them? Yeah, there's actually two of them there. It's love bug season. So when you decide you want to do something, then you require to make sure that you don't put yourself in any situation which is going to make it difficult for you. So example, we'll look at brahmacharis. So brahmachari's association with women is very restricted because they've taken that vow to protect their brahmachari life, they restrict. It doesn't mean, you might say, well, if they're so strong, why do they have to restrict? No, it's not the assumption that they're strong. The assumption is they're not strong, but they've made a vow to live this way. And because they're not strong, they have to be strict and careful and formal in their dealings with women. So, sometimes women may think, well, you're so renounced, why do you have to be so fanatical? But they're not renounced. They just decided that they want to live this way. And because they decided they want to live this way, there's a concomitant set of behaviors, attitudes, and actions which will protect them. And so it ensures that they can keep their vow. And a symptom of of actually executing their vow is that they would restrict themselves. Now you could say, well, if they're so advanced, they wouldn't need to restrict themselves. And I would say the sign that they're advanced is they do restrict themselves. So, Krishna Karshani says, is it not that Ajamil had to have potential to be influenced by the prostitute? Some may see a prostitute, but it wouldn't have any influence on that person. Is not that by our consciousness? Prabhupada describes that in the purport. We are attracting certain situations. There's several ways of looking at it. If we look at it in the way that the story is told, or the way we're meant to understand it, the idea is that every young man is attracted to women, and he was a young man. And so being in that environment, it was extremely difficult for him to withstand, because in that culture you don't see those things. So it was kind of like it was such a drastic thing for a young boy to see in that culture, and it had such a deep effect on him. Now, yes, you could argue that wouldn't have happened to everyone and anyone, but we could also argue that something would have happened to every young boy in that culture, something unfavorable. Then Krishna Karshani says, but isn't it that we find ourselves in those situations because we want these things? Yes, you could say that, yes and no, but everybody wants these things. So in one sense the answer is yes, we all want these things. But then the question is, well, how badly do you want them? And then you might say, if you want them badly, Krishna will put them in front of you. But you could also say he'll put them in front of you as a test to see how you react. And so if you're able to renounce them, then you've passed the test. All glories to you. You're fantastic. And does it mean that you wanted it? Not necessarily, but Krishna wanted to just make sure that you didn't want it, so he put it in front of you so you could renounce it. So that's one possibility. Other possibilities, you wanted it, and he put it in front of you, and you failed. So you could say that with a Jamil. But the third possibility is the assumption that we all want it, but we're not consciously making the effort to get it, but that we're weak, and therefore when it's in front of us, we give into it. And therefore the idea is that if I'm weak, I shouldn't allow myself to be in that situation, because it's not that we think, well, if I'm Krishna conscious, I should be able to do anything and go anywhere. We don't think that way. Rather, we think, if I'm Krishna conscious, I'll take care of my vow. I'll protect that vow. So I don't want to go anywhere where I may be either tempted to break it or just disturbed. Because sometimes it's not that you're going to break it, but these samskaras, these impressions, they enter your mind. And so they're there. So you didn't give in to temptation, but the picture of that temptation is in your mind and it's disturbing you. So ideally, you wouldn't want to put yourself ideally you'd want to avoid situations as far as possible that would put those samskaras in your mind. And now you might say, but you can't avoid those. We're spreading Krishna consciousness, and that's true. And Prabhupada said, Lord Chaitanya said, when you're preaching, you'll always be protected. So somehow there's like a cover, a protective shield, we could say, when we're giving Krishna consciousness. And we experience that. When we're giving Krishna consciousness, we're not so easily affected by the environment. But still, it's not that, well, because I'm preaching, I'll just go into a naked dance hall and distribute books to all the men there because they're so bewildered they'll probably just take books. It's not like we would think we can do that and I'm protected still. We would be careful. Or it's not that if I'm a man I'm just going to approach women because they're more inclined to take books, but that may not be good for me. So yes, we're protected, but we don't want to take advantage of it. And in the purport, Prabhupada said that what Ajamil saw was quite rare, but today it's not rare. So Prabhupada was saying in the purport that it's a challenge for brahmacharis in this age, because what Ajamil saw they see everywhere. And they have to be extremely strong. So that was the point in the purport. Yeah, you can withstand it, but you can't withstand it if you're weak. But you can withstand it if you're strong. That was the point in the purport. So Clinton says, it's easy to make a vow, but very difficult to keep a vow. Yes. Which means you really didn't make a vow. You just said a vow. How is it justified that gambling is forbidden, yet Kshatriyas are allowed to gamble? I understand. We're all born Shudra. We can elevate ourselves to Brahman quality. So can one evaluate themselves to Kshatriya quality? Not that I want to be. No. Even if we're Vaishnavas, so even if we execute the activity of a Kshatriya, we're not going to adopt the culture of a Kshatriya. So yeah, so that's the idea. We have Brahminical culture. So every Varna has a particular culture, and so certain things are allowed within that culture. Prabhupada wanted us to develop Brahminical qualities, at least for the inside circle. If we're talking about the broader society, then if in the broader society Kshatriyas are gambling, then we would have to consider that at some time when that happens. Just like you remember many years ago that President Clinton did the wrong thing within the White House. He engaged in a sexual affair with one of his aides, one of the people that work for him. So some devotees were saying, well, for kings, that's kind of normal. They have many wives and many maidservants. But that's not the culture in America. So, are we going to develop a culture where kings will have many wives? And it's probably not, because it's not allowed in society. And in Kali Yuga, it would be difficult for someone to evolve spiritually if they did such things. So, but at least for us, we understand the principle is that whatever service we're asked to do, it might be in a particular varna, or our job may be in a particular varna. But we're cultivating a Brahminical culture, so that means no gambling, rising early, being clean, and so forth. We don't go hunting. Kshatriyas went hunting. Like that. So that's the idea. Krishna says, but Ajamil already had a wife, so for me it was always interesting that if he feels lust, he could fulfill this desire with his wife. Well, you're not a man, so you won't understand it, but I'll try to explain how a man looks at the world. A man's sexual desire is different than a woman, so he's activated by his sight, and his sight stimulates. It doesn't have to touch the woman or anything, it's just the visual. And a lot of men have extramarital relationships, and they still have deep affection for their wives, and their wives, they don't understand it, and they say, no, I love you, I just have this desire to fulfill, and So sometimes, where Prabhupada says, generally, men like many wives, so they can have sex with many women. That's the conditioned nature of men. That's why there's polygamy, so they can fulfill those desires. So even a man has a nice wife, his sexual desire, his sexual appetite is such that he likes to enjoy with other women. And I can't say anything about Ajamil's wife other than that she was a chaste and devoted wife, but maybe the prostitute was more beautiful, and the prostitute aroused the sexual desire. And then we have that story of a woman who found out that her husband was very attracted to a prostitute, and so she went over and served the prostitute, and finally said, "Well, what do you want?" And she said, "Well, my husband wants to enjoy with you, but we don't have money." She said, "Okay, send him over." So what the prostitutes would do is they would wine and dine their customers. They'd cook for them, and they would like have a whole date out, and then they would engage in their affairs. So she made food, and one was cooked in an iron pot, one was cooked in a gold pot, and he said, "Do you taste the difference?" And he said, "No." And he said, "Well, they were cooked in two different pots, and your wife is like the gold pot, and I'm like the iron pot, and it's just sex, it's the same, doesn't matter who you have it with." So he got the message. Better you have this chaste wife. And so that's the nature of man. They're just agitated. They want to have sex. They're always looking for a beautiful, better woman. So he wasn't fulfilled with his wife. Or maybe his wife was not, she was chaste, and, men, it's not enjoyable to have sex with a chaste, devoted, spiritual woman. It's like, that's not what you do with a chaste, devoted, spiritual woman. You worship deities, you read Bhagavatam, you do those things. So that could have also been, yeah. So, anyway, you understand. I don't want to elaborate on this, but that's information that all men understand, and now we're making that horrible information available to women who are probably going to divorce all their husbands now when they see that their husbands are really like, and you're going to go, "Honey, are you really like that?" And the man's going to go, "Well, I won't do anything, but yeah, I'm kind of like that, yeah." It's one pastor was saying how a man's walking with his wife and children down the street, he's holding her hand, and there's a beautiful woman who walks by, and a woman catches his eye. That's the nature of the male sexual desire. He's caught by beauty. And, Krishna is more beautiful, and so we're supposed to be caught by his beauty and enamored by his beauty. But the same principle is there. It's beauty, and so, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So a advanced devotee doesn't see the beauty of a woman as beautiful. He sees Krishna's beauty as beautiful, and he's enamored by Krishna's beauty, attracted by Krishna's beauty. He surrenders to Krishna's beauty, but ordinary men surrender to the beauty of a woman, and it's hard for them to resist a beautiful woman, even if they're happily married. And the sexual desire, it's a sensual desire, and the senses are called vegam, and vegam means pushing, and sometimes the senses just push, and you can't control yourself. Like when you're really hungry and you just have to eat, or you're really angry and you just have to say something really stupid that you're going to regret as soon as you say it. And the senses just push you. So sexual desire for a woman, it's not aroused as easily as it is for a man. And then the man's sexual desire just pushes. And pretty soon, you end up like a Jamil doing something really stupid. Clint says, if Krishna breaks his promises but keeps the promise of his devotees, should we have more faith in his devotees, greatest beings, Sri Radha? If Krishna breaks his promises. Krishna breaking his promises is transcendental, part of his Leela. But he keeps the promises of his devotees, yes. Should we have more faith in his devotees? Well, you may know the story that Krishna told Arjuna, declare that my devotee will never be vanquished, because sometimes Krishna, for the service of his devotees, may break his promise, or for a higher cause may break his promise. So Krishna said, Arjuna, you say that my devotee will never be vanquished, because not everyone's going to believe me, but they'll believe you. So what you say is true. Yes, we can believe in Krishna is sometimes crooked. So, of course, this is a transcendental topic. Should I believe in Krishna? In rasa, maybe the devotee won't believe in Krishna. I can't trust you. You said you were returning from Vrindavan, and you didn't. For 90 years, you didn't come back. So how can I trust you? So that's transcendental. But yes, we should have faith in Krishna's devotees. Faith in Sri Radha, of course. She's our only hope. Jackie says or asks, we will find out. Mother Jackie in Las Vegas, Ki Jai. Finally figured out how to see your video. Yeah. Jackie is part of the generation of, it takes us a while to figure out how to use things electronic, which is why we need to hire a 7-year-old Chinese girl to help us. Yeah, we're kind of... Anyway, I think it's a blessing that we're not so good with computers and iPhones. And we don't use them that much. We are, Krishna Kaushani says, we are creators of our environment, so if we have bad consciousness, we are creating not good environment. That's true. And it is affecting our consciousness. That's true. Even more in a negative way. How to get out of this. First, I want to explain what she's saying. Whoops. Sometimes you hit the wrong spot. I can't see more. I don't know if there's a whole lot to see more. Yeah. Get out of this detrimental circle. So what she's saying is, she's saying, we're affected by our environment. We've established that, and we experience that. But what we don't always realize is that sometimes because of our bad consciousness, we create a bad environment, or we create an environment which is aligned with our consciousness. So if our consciousness is low, we create an environment that's low. And then we're affected by the environment. Although, I did read yesterday, I don't know if this is true, that intelligent people have messy desks. If that's true, I have a very high IQ. So they're so creative, their minds are everywhere, they don't have time to clean up. Of course, Prabhupada was meticulously organized, so I don't know if I accept that. Intelligent people have messy desks, but it did make me feel good. So this is an interesting phenomena. If I'm in my consciousness is the mode of ignorance, I'm going to create an environment which is messy, dirty, chaotic. It's going to cause me to be less lazy and very spaced out and so forth. And then, if I'm foolish, I'll blame all my problems on the environment, not realizing that I actually created the environment because of my low consciousness. So, inherent in your question is another question. If I'm being influenced, or if I'm in the mode of ignorance, can I actually get out of it? Or is it just that once I'm being influenced by it, I'm destined to be influenced by it until I circumstantially get into another environment? And the answer is that as a jiva soul, you always have free will. It's just harder to exhibit free will the lower you go down in the modes of nature. If you study the 3 modes of nature, one of the things you'll see is that to exhibit free will, to make proper choices consciously, is easiest in the mode of goodness. That's where you have the most determination. That's where you have the most ability to make the right choices, because there's the least degrading influence on you. And the influence of Sattva Gun is almost transcendental. Many of the influences of Sattva Gun are transcendental. You see everyone as spirit soul, your determination is unbroken, you are steady, you eat foods in goodness, and so forth. So your consciousness in goodness is just like an ideal state of consciousness from which to elevate yourself to a transcendental position. Shuddha sattva. Sattva is goodness. When you get into passion, when you're influenced by passion, when you're in the mode of passion, you're predominated by personal motives. You're just doing things that you like because you want, and it's all about you. So naturally, to get out of that is going to be harder, because when we get attached to doing something, no, don't do that. No, I want to do it. No, it's not good for you. I know, but I want to do it. No, I'll just do it a little bit. No, don't do it at all. This is going to be do it for 5 minutes. I'm going to go crazy if I don't do it, or if I don't eat it, or if I don't touch it, if I don't see it. Right? So, the mode of passion, because it is engaging you with your senses according to the things that you really like, You know when you get attached to something, it's hard to pull out. Can you pull out? You can always pull out. We always have a choice. There's no question we don't have a choice. But when we allow ourselves to be strongly influenced by the modes of nature, at that point we really don't have a choice, although we do, but it just doesn't feel like it, and it's so hard to control it. It's like an addict. Does an addict have a choice to stop drinking or taking drugs? Of course he does. But it doesn't seem like it. That's the meaning of addiction, that he can't. But how does any addict overcome addiction? He joins a 12-step program. He does something, no matter how hard it is, or somebody pushes him, drags him to the program. At least he walks in. He doesn't run away. So now you get into mode of ignorance, and you have a bigger problem. Because mode of ignorance, it is the most binding, and therefore in the mode of ignorance, it's the most difficult to use your willpower. In fact, one of the descriptions of the mode of ignorance is practically you don't have willpower. You can only think of doing something, but you can't get your thinking into action because you don't have that will. So then it seems like, well, if I'm in the mode of ignorance, or if I'm influenced by the mode of ignorance, how could I ever get out? Because I have no will. But people do. But somehow the drug addict drags himself in desperation to the clinic and says, get me free of drugs. I've had enough. You always have that free will, but it's just harder. It's more unlikely you're going to utilize that free will when you're in the mode of ignorance. So the point is, we need to exhibit our free will to serve Krishna. So if we're living a sattvic life, it's very easy. If we're living a rajasic or a tamasic life, we make it hard on ourselves. Now you might say, but I live in the world. Jackie lives in Las Vegas. That's like the personification of Kali, right? But within her life in Las Vegas, she has to create sattva guna. She goes for walks in the park. Her house is clean. She has a beautiful altar. She offers all her food to Krishna. She reads Bhagavad Gita before she goes to work. She has pictures of Krishna on her desk. You create that environment. So even though the whole city is polluted by the 4 sins, it's definitely polluted. I lived there at 75, and I felt that pollution. I felt it physically. Of course, I lived closer to it than most people live now. But I felt it. I felt the heaviness in the air of all the sin that goes on there. But you have to create your sattvic environment within your own life. What you look at on YouTube, on Facebook, it affects you. It makes samskars, impressions. Samskar means impression. Everything we're seeing is making an impression. Everything we're hearing is making an impression. Everything we're touching, everything we're tasting, it's all making an impression. Do we have choices? Yes. You're a jiva. You have choice. Krishna gave you choice. If you don't have choice, how are you ever going to go back to Godhead? You have to choose to do that. So if we make a choice, this is the whole point of this class, is make a choice to live in sattva. And then the sattva will affect you. Make a choice to be influenced by transcendental sound. The transcendental sound will affect you. Make a choice to see the deities. Make a choice to be with devotees. Make a choice to read Srimad Bhagavatam instead of some other book. Make a choice to hear transcendental topics. If you just do that, the hearing, the association, the chanting, that's all going to do the work. You just have to put yourself in that environment. So when I was in Texas, I was giving an example of rooms. So think of the modes of nature as 3 rooms. There's the sattva room, there's the tama room, the raja room, and the tama room. And so in the tamas room, everything is dirty. Everything is completely disorganized. The paint is falling off the walls. People are just lounging around. They're dirty. They haven't bathed recently. Their clothes are dirty. They're just eating extremely unhealthy food. And so if you live in that room for a month, you're going to start being like them, even though that's not your nature. You go to the Raja room. What's going on in the Raja room? Everyone's super busy. Everyone's get ahead, become successful. Everyone's working on making not 1 million, but 1 billion. 1 million, that's for losers. We're after 1 billion. And everyone's working 15, 16 hours a day. Their family life is completely messed up. Their health is messed up. They're just working on a computer, on the phone. Busy. Success, going for it. They have piles of books, how to become successful, how to make it. So if you're in that environment, you're going to become really passionate, you're going to become really motivated to get ahead, to get more, to achieve, get what you want in life, accumulate, get that house, get the second house, get that car, get the next car, get the bigger car, get the bigger this, get the better that. You're just going to, if you live in that room with those people in that environment, that's what you're going to be like. It would be unusual if you didn't become that way. You'd have to be a pure devotee not to become that way. Then you go into the sattva room, everything is clean, everything's peaceful, the music is nice, the colors are nice, people are talking about philosophy, the purpose of life, some people are meditating, they're doing service, like that. So then you live there for a month, you become like that. So then this makes it obvious that for us, the decisions we want to make are decisions that will put us within those right rooms. That's the whole idea. Just get in the right room, and you'll be fine. But if you get in the wrong room, as conditioned souls are, it just makes it really hard for us. I'm in the passionate room, but I'm a devotee. So then I just have to struggle against my environment. So why would we want to struggle against our environment? It doesn't make any sense, right? It makes no sense, which is another meaning of nonsense. It makes no sense. That's called nonsense. In the story of Ajamil, how is Krishna so merciful? Some conversations when preaching with devotees on this topic, some devotees sometimes said if Ajamil could sin and still receive the mercy. How can I answer a question like that? I'm not sure what your question is. Let me read that again. How is Krishna so merciful? Some conversations when preaching with devotees on this topic. Devotees sometimes said Jamil could sin and still receive the mercy from Krishna. They will remain Prakrita Bhaktas. And I understand. So in other words, he's saying, look at Ajamil, he gave up his bhakti. He was a Brahmin when he was young. He gave it up. He gave up he was a very strict Brahmin. He gave all that up. And then he just engaged in sinful life. Eat, drink, and be merry. And in the end, he got mercy. Well, why did he get mercy? What is the story teaching us? Now, it's funny you bring this up, and I think it's a really good point, because this is the example of somebody looking at this story solely from the mode of passion. Like what can I get from this? What's the least I can do and still go to heaven? Could I actually sin and still go to heaven? Well, this story from Ajamil seems to give credence to that idea. I like this story. I think I'm going to give up Krishna consciousness, find myself one good prostitute, marry her, and just become a criminal. And hey, at the end of life, Krishna's going to come save me from the Yamadutas, so it's all good. That's looking at the story from the mode of passion, or perhaps from the mode of ignorance. That's not why the story is there in Bhagavatam. The story is there in the Bhagavatam to glorify the power of the holy name. And also to show, yes, that Krishna was merciful because Ajamil was a Brahmin. He did Brahminical activity, he did service. And so, it's a long story, but a sage told Ajamil's prostitute wife, this next son, which was their last son, you should call your son Narayan. So it was a transcendental scheme. So Krishna was merciful. Now, another aspect of this is that Narayan didn't become Krishna conscious. He was just freed from going to hell, so he had to do the work. So, not Narayan, Ajamil. So after Ajamil was protected by the Vishnudutas. The Vishnudutas didn't take him back to Vaikuntha. Said, okay, now the scorecard, the account is cleared. Now you can do your devotional service. So he had to do his devotional service and become purified. So, why waste all those years when you're going to have to do what a Jamil did in the end anyway? So, eat, drink, and be merry, and then you're going to have to see the Yamadutas and hope that the Vishnudutas come, and hope that you say Narayan at the time of death. All that doesn't make sense. And why would you want to waste that much time anyway, when you can just chant Hare Krishna and go back to Godhead? And why would you want to become a thief and a criminal? So, what this story is teaching is that it's teaching the power of the holy name, and it's also teaching that Krishna inspired Jamil through these sages, Jamil's wife, to give his son the name Narayan, and he was very attached to the son. He was always calling Narayana, Narayana, Narayana. So naturally, when the Yamadutas came, he called Narayana. So that was a special blessing. Now, we have faith that Krishna will bless us, but we don't take it to the extent that, well, whatever, I'll just be sinful, Krishna will save me. It's not, no. We have faith because we're engaged in devotional service. To think that I can do anything and Krishna will save me, that's not what you're supposed to get from this story, and that's not the way we're supposed to think. Because we're supposed to think that I want to please Krishna in this life, not that I want to enjoy independently of Krishna and then go back to Krishna. That's like, huh? That doesn't make sense. Okay, Krishna, in this life, I'm going to enjoy sense gratification. I'm going to chant your name at the end, and then you're going to take me back to you where I'll enjoy eternal bliss and knowledge. You're not going to make it, I don't think you're going to make it back there in that consciousness when you try to pass through the Vaikuntha security gate. They're going to say, sorry, you're carrying some contaminated metals in your heart, and you're going to have to go back to the material world and get an operation and get them out, because we can't let you here. So entering the spiritual world is not like you just mess up here and get a pass and then you just go there. So, and the other point is we want to please Krishna. So what does sense gratification have to do with pleasing Krishna? So that'll be like a Jamil. I'll just, marry a prostitute, enjoy life and go back to Godhead. Yeah, how much can I get away with and go to heaven? You can't get away with much. That's the devious materialistic mind. So, try to understand what the message is of this story, that the holy name saved him, but that was Namabhas, so it wasn't love, it wasn't love of Krishna. So then Jamil engaged in Krishna consciousness, his life was extended by the mercy of the holy name of the Vishnudutas. And then he engaged in devotional service. You can't, it's like, we're trying to bypass the system, alright, Like, what's the least I have to do? Prabhu, tell me. What's the least I have to do to go back to Godhead? I mean, can I get high once in a while? Can I have a girlfriend and a wife, and or two wives and two girlfriends? I mean, give me the bottom line. What can I get away with? It's like, what do I really have to do? Is it really 16 rounds at 4 rags? I heard some devotees get initiated with 3 rags and 4 rounds. Is that okay? Could I do that? That's not the mentality. It's true that in some Gaudiya Vaishnava movements, you can get a first initiation with 4 rounds and 3 rags or 3.5. But it's not that they're encouraging you to chant 4 rounds and follow 3 rags. They're encouraging you to chant 16 and follow 4 rags. But to be merciful, in some Gaudiya traditions, they started off at a lower entrance level. Entrance fee is lower, but the full admission fee is 16 rounds, 4 regs. So Prabhupada said that's what you have to do to go back to Godhead. So don't ever think if the price is going to be reduced. We're at the bottom, rock bottom discount price, 4 regs and 16 rounds. It doesn't get any cheaper than that. Don't try to bargain on that. Because you know from your own experience, you go to a store and everything's like $230, $300, $400, and then you find one for $60. And that one you find for $60, what happens? It doesn't exactly operate like the 220. And 3 weeks later, it breaks. And you call up customer service, and they don't speak English, and they just went out of business, and you know the story, right? So yeah, get what you pay for. From my understanding, that Clinton says, from my understanding thus far, I understand that Ajamil was a pure Brahmana boy, and his spiritual practices made his heart soft. So when he saw the Sudra and the Sudrani embracing the forest, that made a lasting impression within his soft heart. Yeah, it would make an impression on hard hearts also. Whereas if his heart was hard, he might not be affected. I don't know what you mean by hard. Basically, my question is, how do we protect ourselves from the environment as we see billboards, advertising that are bound? Well, Prabhupada explains in the purport. He said, unless you're really strong, unless you're sense controlled, you're going to be affected. So there are 2 points here. Most people would be affected by this, but the question is, how affected will you be? And how affected you will be, it's not necessarily hard heart, it's just how strong you are. Devotees don't have hard hearts. So I think we have to use a better word, protected heart. Your heart is protected. So in the purport, Prabhupada's saying, you have to be really fixed up. So if you're really fixed up in your vows, you're really fixed up in your sadhana, then when you're in that environment, you're okay. You are determined. Okay, I am determined to follow these principles, so I'm not going to let anything bother me. So if that's the case, then you see these people, you'll just think, oh, this is abominable, and you'll just walk away. But he was probably enamored by it. He never saw it. He was innocent, young, and attracted. So he obviously was meditating on it or watching it because the seed in his head grew to get his own prostitute or get that prostitute. So dayato visham punsam, you meditate on something long enough, you become attached to it. Sangat means you become attached. Teshu pajayate. In that thing awakens or is born attachment. So generally, if you're strong, then you don't meditate on. You might be in contact with sense gratification or some degraded activity. It's all around us, but you don't meditate on it. You just go, oh, that's horrible. So when you're in Sattva Gun, your senses are different. When you're Krishna conscious, your senses are different. So they're not attracted. It's like you walk by a butcher shop, right? You just go, oh, yuck, and you turn your head away. So when you're Krishna conscious, any kind of sense gratification you're in touch with, you look at it and go, yuck, that's horrible. But if you're not, then it can be attractive. That's the problem. So when you're strong in Krishna consciousness, your senses, they're not so attracted to these things. You look at these things and you just go, this is horrible. This food is horrible. This sexual thing, like, okay, let's look at this. Let's look at society. Prabhupada said sex is for procreation. And procreation, you don't procreate if you're not married. That's the way it's been for the last 10 zillion quadrillion years. It just changed about 30 years ago. Society went through this metamorphosis like 30, 40, 50 years ago. Whereas in the history of society, sex was for procreation within marriage. That's, everybody understood it. There were maybe little deviations here or there in history, but basically people understood that. And women didn't walk around half naked. They wore clothes from basically their neck, from basically their head to their toes. If you just Google dress styles, before 1900, and women were covered. That's just how it was. It's not like we're fanatics, wear sari, cover your head, sex for procreation. That's the way it is. We're so in another universe that we don't understand these things. We think, oh, we're so conservative, and we're so behind the times, and don't be fanatical, and what's your problem? No, it's not like that. We've been bamboozled. So for a devotee, he sees young people, they're madly in love, they're having sex, and then the devotee thinks, yeah, this is really bad because they're using contraception, which is extremely sinful. They're preventing a living entity from entering the womb, and even if the living entity enters the womb, they're probably going to kill it, or the living entity is going to be born with a 17-year-old mother, raised basically by her grandparents or his grandparents. So when we look at that, this whole sexual thing, and the videos of all these half-naked girls dancing and the music, we look at that and go, yuck, this is horrible. If we're Krishna conscious, that's how we'll think. It's just as you think that way with meat, you'll think it with sex, you'll think it with drugs, you'll think it with everything. That's how you protect yourself. Your senses are purified by your practice of bhakti. That love bug loves me. Your senses are purified by your practice of bhakti. So you naturally have no taste. You're hearing some music which vibrates. A lot of the popular music. There he is. There they are. I don't know if you can see both of them. One of them's really little. Some of the music, it vibrates this sexual sound, just really, really strongly. It's all over the music. And so we hear that, and it's like, yeah, it's just, this has nothing to do with marriage, Krishna consciousness, raising a family, being chaste, sattvic values, moral values. It has everything to do with meeting a girl and taking her home and calling that love and spending the night together. So we hear that, and it's just like, this is horrible. We understand it's destroying the consciousness of the people who hear it. It's impregnating samskaras of love. Did you know that in previous generations before industrialization, marriage was not about romance. It was about, we have to live, we have to grow food on our land, and I need a wife and kids to help me. It was about survival. It was totally practical. And it was about compatibility of families, not like, I like you, I like your eyes, you like my eyes. Yeah, let's just move in together. It wasn't like that. That's this culture. So we have to be purified enough that when we see those things, we just say, this is horrible, the consequences are horrible, we're not attracted, we wouldn't want to be involved with people who think this way and people who do these things. But if we're in the mode of passion, and then we see passionate activities, immediately there's an attraction. That's the problem. So if you're sattvic, you won't be attracted. You just look at it and you go, it's not for me, and this is really bad. It's like going by McDonald's, you look at people eating at McDonald's and just think, this is unfortunate. This is really bad. This is bad for them, it's bad for the world, bad for the cows. You're not thinking, well, let me check it out, maybe there's something to eat. I think the problem is the mode of passion is more attractive to us, especially sexually, and because that's the foundation of material life. So it's something to think about. If I'm attracted to the modes of nature, that's not a good sign. We should be becoming more and more attached to the transcendental nature. So I have a question. How to be strong in a family when a family man wants to live in Rajagun? That I would need more details, because this is a tough question, and I could get myself arrested if I answer it in the wrong way, and I already got arrested a few times for answering it what I think is the right way, but for some people it wasn't the right way. If a man is in Rajaguna, as a wife, you should try to help him get out of Rajaguna. Like, let's sit down and read Bhagavatam. That'll get us out of Rajaguna. I heard something really, really interesting that I want to tell you, and I haven't told you, and this is from my dear friend Sri Radhe Govinda, the astrologer. She knows so much about astrology, especially she's interested in counseling devotees. to be better grihastas. So she relates astrology a lot to grihasta life, and she said something which is so interesting, and it's so funny, but it's so true, and I never heard this before. She said the romance, we're all about romance, do your hair up right, the right clothes, be attractive. So you can find that beautiful girl and have romance, We are so mesmerized by romance. It's in the novels, it's in the movies, it's in the music. So she said, for Brahmins, people in the mode of goodness who by nature are Brahmins, who have cultivated Brahminical qualities, you know what they do when they're romantic? You know what their romance is? They sit down and read Bhagavatam together. That's their union. That you could say I don't want to say sex, but you know what I'm saying. That's their romantic time together. That's what they enjoy doing. They sit down and read Bhagavatam. It fulfills the need for romance. They sit down and do kirtan together. They go on japa walks. It fulfills the need for romance. When people are in a mode of passion, they don't do that. They don't sit. Their romance is not Bhagavatam. Their romance is sex. That's what they do. So, that's the problem. If your husband doesn't want to sit and read Bhagavatam and worship the deities with you and do kirtan, but his concept of romance is sex, that means he's in the mode of passion. And so what can you do to get him out of passion? Tie him up and pour the Bhagavatam in his ear? I don't know. Drag him to the temple, tie him up to a chair in the temple until let him leave for 2 hours. Give him goodness. So you want to help elevate him to mode of goodness, because when he's in the mode of goodness, he's not going to see you as a sex object. But when he's in the mode of passion, think you're my wife, we should engage in sex. So that's the problem, which is, of course, obviously a problem if you marry a man who's not a devotee. It's going to be an issue, unless for some reason he likes being celibate, or he's very sattvic. So it's something to consider. But and what's romance for people in the mode of ignorance? Sleeping 12 hours a day, especially on Sunday, we could sleep 12 hours. That's our romance. And kind of like doing nothing all day. Yeah, I mean, sex might be too much trouble for them. Just doing nothing all day together, that will be their romance. She didn't tell me that. That's kind of a joke, but that's the way I see it. So, then you get into the next point, then you might say, but yeah, well, what if I tried and he doesn't want, and he's insisting that he wants to have sex? Of course, you did make a vow not to do it, which makes it a problem. And in this age, we're so willing to give up our vows and say, well, but isn't it just sex in marriage? Isn't that no illicit sex? We can say it's better than sex outside of marriage. But the thing you have to understand is, and I just read this yesterday, it's such a nice quote from Prabhupada, he said the whole point is to become attached to Krishna, not attached to sex. So if you're engaging in sex, the more you engage in sense gratification, the more you become attached to those things. So the goal is to become attached to Krishna, and if you engage in sex, you become attached to sex. You say, well, can I become attached to Krishna and sex? Well, they're actually opposite. Love of God transforms into lust. They're opposite ends of the totem pole. Now, not everybody wants to acknowledge that, but that it's true. It just is. That's the way it is. We can't make believe it isn't. That's not going to help us. Love of God transforms into lust. Lust, is sexual desire. So if we're cultivating sexual desire, it's eroding at our love, our ability. It's just pulling us away from it. So, can't we engage in sex and love Krishna? It's just postponing it, basically. It's pulling you away from it. Well, can't we just engage in sex and be pure devotees? No, the symptom of pure devotees, they're detached from it. And you have to do what a pure devotee does if you want to be a pure devotee. So, but we understand that some people, they just can't renounce it. If they renounce it completely, they'll end up in the mental hospital. And so your question then would be, well, what if my husband can't renounce it? Am I obliged to engage with him? You're not obliged. You're, of course, obliged to your guru to follow your principle. But you're going to have to make a decision. Maybe you're going to lose your husband if you don't. That's a decision you have to make. Yeah, and it's a tough decision, and I wish all the men were in Sattvagun, and I wish all the men weren't raised in a culture which is full of passion, and I wish all the men respected and saw their wives as goddesses of fortune to be served, not to be enjoyed, but unfortunately that's not the case. And it makes it really hard on women. And so, you know, these are tough decisions because, you know, making a certain decision could cause divorce. And you may have kids, and now the kids are going to grow up in a divorced family. But at the same time, you don't want to break your principles. So, yeah, it's tough. Very tough. So, my best advice is talk to your husband and explain how important it is for you to follow your principles, to follow your vows. How can I help you? Come to Sattvagun, because in Sattvagun you won't want to do these things. How can I help you see me as a gopi to be enjoyed by Krishna and like that? We're living in a world at a time in which passion predominates and ignorance predominates. And yes, it's hard for young men. And, you know, okay, you don't take vows, you're not initiated, all right, you know, take them when you're ready. Get it out of your blood, whatever. I'm not going to go tell you to do it, but you know, I don't have to tell you. You'll do it anyway. So that's another level. Then you take initiation when you're older, and it's out of your blood. But as I was saying before, I think it is valuable for us to understand that traditionally, sexual activity was always done in marriage for procreation. At least they were responsible. It wasn't just rampant. In our societies, with all the movies, all the novels, all the music, all the way we dress, the predominance of women in the media on the covers of magazines and all this, that didn't exist in former times. We weren't living, it was much easier for a family just to be, you know, to understand, you know, the utilization of sex. And I grew up in that culture, so I'm not immune from it. I feel it, I understand. I grew up in a culture that demeaned women to sex objects. They weren't really meant to be taken care of as much as they were to be enjoyed. So you have to understand your poor husband or the poor men, they were groomed that way. It's really hard for them. You know, they don't just see all women as mothers. Yes, Mataji. Yeah, some beautiful, beautiful girl looks like an Apsara. Yes, Mataji. That's really hard for them to see her as Mataji. They may say that, they may try, but it's a challenge, for sure. So, you know, we have to understand these men have a hard time. We have to try to help them. But the holy name is more powerful than sex. And so the holy name can help us. And so if your husband who is having difficulty controlling himself is not chanting good rounds, that's a really good place to start. If he's not reading Prabhupada's books every day, if you can get him to chant good rounds, to read Prabhupada's books every day, then he'll be able to deal with it. But if he's not doing that, then it's like, yeah, it's going to be tough, and you'll have to make some decisions, you know. What direction you want to go with this, and can you actually help him at all? And, you know, is it your duty? Now, some people would say, well, he's your husband. It's your duty because if you don't do it with him, he'll go to a prostitute and this and that. Yeah, you know, there's an argument for that side. And some people argue against that. No, you shouldn't break your vows no matter what. Let him go. Let your kids be fatherless. Just keep your vows. And people have argued that. So you have devotees arguing both sides of the issue. Ultimately, you're going to have to make a decision. But the first point is help this poor guy. Get his act together, because then you won't have that problem. I can't say any more on that, because if I say any more in one side of the argument, you know which side I'll get my head chopped off, which it already got chopped off, but I glued it back together. So I learned my lesson. You know, don't present both sides. I'll let you decide. You know, I mean, you know. Of course, you can always ask your guru, and your guru might say, no, no way, no way. Or your guru might say, no, yeah, keep the marriage together. Because I don't know your husband, I don't know you, I don't know the situation. Maybe, whatever. Your guru might say that. And gurus have said that. So I'm not going to say anything. I value my head right here in my head, so I'm not going to say anything. That's as best I can tell you. Is it not that we should become so strong to be Krishna conscious in any environment? Yes. Is it possible on our level? Yes, if you're determined. Understand that we should avoid toxic environment, but sometimes because of maddening wrong decisions in the past, we end up in situations that maybe are detrimental to our Krishna consciousness, and maybe we're so weak. Yeah. The thing is, there's discussions with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada acknowledges, and we all have to acknowledge this, that sometimes we're weak, but it's not premeditated, and sometimes we fall. But the immediate response of a devotee when he falls is get up and get back on your feet and ask Krishna to forgive you. So yeah, sometimes there will be situations, environments that may come up that could cause us to fall. But it's not that we can say, well, that's just the way it is, so I'm going to fall and I'll just get back up and keep falling. No. But sometimes circumstantially we can be in awkward situations. It can make it extremely difficult. But the whole point of this, what Prabhupada's saying in the story of Ajamil, is that you really have to be strong because you're going out in a world where there's a lot of contamination. So don't take it lightly. Inject yourself with a Bhagavatam, inject yourself with the holy name. There's a lot of devotees who don't read and they have bad rounds. They're pretty much sitting ducks in the material world. That's not a good position to be in. You're going out in a contaminated environment. You have to be very pure, and if you are pure, you'll be okay. And if on some rare situation you slip, you'll immediately get back up and you'll realize your mistake, and it'll probably make you more careful about your rounds, about your hearing, about your association, all these things, worshipping deities, all these things. You'll realize, yeah, these things are powerful, I need them. Okay, Clinton says, is it possible to reverse the effects and state of Kali Yuga? Yes. Through our Harinam? Yes. Movement. Or are we fighting a losing battle? Kind of, but don't give up. Both. We're fighting a losing battle, and the holy name is purifying the atmosphere, and if enough people become Krishna conscious, we might tip things in a certain direction. I don't know if we're going to ever take over the world and make the whole world Krishna conscious, but that's certainly what Prabhupada's desire. My desire is to create a revolution against materialistic society. I just want to see everybody happy. So Prabhupada's vision was to completely turn around materialistic society. So we should think that way, that's our mission. Whether we can do it or not, we can do something. Can we change the environment? To some degree, yes. Can we change it entirely? That remains to be seen. Prabhupada was asked this question. He said, it depends on you. Can we win the war? Well, you have all the weapons. Now how are you going to fight? I don't know how you're going to fight, but I've given you all the weapons. So now it depends on you. So the power of transcendental sound, it's already changing the environment. Things are changing. And we just have to keep going. And will we lose soldiers? Of course we will. But keep plugging away, because yes, we're going to get there. Okay, Bhagavat Sala says, I'm watching the royal wedding at the moment on TV. The message that God is love, not lust. Yeah. The more I read Krishna book on Bhagavatam, especially 10th canto about Krishna and the Gopis, I notice my lustful mentality and seems to decrease more. Good. And why do devotees shy away from discussing? Well, the idea is Krishna and the Gopis, the supreme enjoyer, is enjoying his supreme objects of enjoyment. So there's a man and a woman, not really, but it looks like a man and woman, male, female, prakriti, purusha. And so you understand, here's the supreme enjoyer, and by hearing their leelas, I can enjoy whatever it is I'm trying to enjoy with another woman. Pervertedly, I can enjoy by hearing Krishna and the gopis, transcendentally, and that eliminates my desire to enjoy on this plane, because there really is no enjoyment, so it uproots it. But it is also said that if one is not yet pure when he hears the pastimes of the gopis, then and Krishna, he thinks, oh, that looks like fun, let me try that. You understand? So it's either going to purify you or putrefy you. So, yeah, why can't I be Krishna and get my own gopis? So then you get in, you go down to the car dealer and buy a sports car and start driving around and looking for women. You got inspired by reading Krishna book. How can I get my gopis? But if you hear in the right consciousness, in a reverential consciousness, understanding position of Krishna and the gopis, then you understand by reading that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, not me. And so you become purified of that desire. Jackie says, Nanny Jackie, Mother Jackie, I work around a lot of young people in today's world. It is not just the men who have the problem. Exactly. Ladies, you're in trouble also. Watch out. Yeah, I read the statistics. 50% of the men cheat on their wives and 30% of the wives cheat on their husbands. So the women are coming close behind in this race. They're catching up fast. How can one identify and follow the right instructions? For example, a Diksha Guru who you see very rarely can give you an instruction which is not in line with the Siksha Guru who you see more often and who knows you better. How can this be solved? Yeah. Sometimes it's true. Your Diksha Guru doesn't know what's going on and your Siksha Guru does, and so your Siksha Guru is giving you instructions within your particular context. Sometimes it's true. And that's why often gurus appoint counselors and so forth, because counselors know. So it's just, just work it out with your Siksha and Diksha Guru, so that your Diksha Guru is okay if your Siksha Guru gives an instruction which is based on the realities of the situation. He gives them that leeway, or that you just naturally understand as mature adults that the Diksha Guru didn't understand the details, and that's why he gave a generic instruction which may not apply to you. You just have to be mature about it. Okay, I have to go. We're having Satyananda Swami is giving class at the temple now. So now, Latra, if you want to hear him, it's going to start about 8. You can go, and then we'll see you tomorrow. The reason I did the class earlier today is because I want to be at the temple to hear his class. And also gives you an opportunity to hear. And so we can continue this discussion tomorrow. And we can learn from Ajamil so many things. And this is my new, I like shooting out here. I shot some videos on my daily videos out here, and the people I showed it to, they really like that mood. And so particularly for the work we're doing with non-devotees, and they shoot all my videos outdoors. And this is, what you're seeing behind me is my neighbor's trees. Where that fence is, our property ends. And I will show you the other side of our property, just to make you envious. There's the house. And we pay less for this than a studio apartment in New York City. That's a forest over there. You see those trees? There's like 100-acre forest over there. And there's our neighbor's house. You can barely see it. That's Vaikuntha Janavi, who we've known for like 35 years. So why not take advantage while we're here of this nice situation? And, some of your questions, like, I'm answering them generically and they're personal, so if you want to explain your personal situation, then you'll have to write to me and we can talk. Or when I travel, when am I coming to South Africa again? So next year, next spring. Unless you send me a ticket. I mean, if I come, I can't come for long before then. So the plan is next spring. But I'll be in Europe. You can meet me in Europe. Anyone who wants to. I'll be in England, I'll be in Scotland, I'll be in France, I'll be in Germany, I'll be in Lithuania, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Croatia, and maybe Ukraine. So if you want to come to any of those places, we can talk more, we can see one another, or you can write me if you have a particular situation, because these answers they're very generic. Yeah. When you look outside our house, you have about an acre and a half behind us, like 2 acres in front of us. Yeah. But it's not expensive here, and it's just the way it is. Yeah. So that's how we can utilize the facility. We grow vegetables. Have an office. This is my office right here. And in the back of that office is our video studio. Right now we're working on an introductory course. There's a lot of devotees in Alach who are helping to help brand new people who are just starting to practice Krishna consciousness, how to chant, how to do kirtan, how to understand sadhana, how to understand Prabhupada, understand his books. So it's a nice studio set up, so that's really nice. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada. Hari Bol.